Nobody ever thinks about what's behind the helmet. That's the thing nobody tells you. You look at them, those guards standing outside Buckingham Palace, completely still, bearskin hats, red coats, that absolute refusal to even blink, and you think, costume. You think, tourist attraction. You think, photo opportunity. You don't think, that man buried 2 friends in the Helmand province 4 months ago. I was in London on a Tuesday in October. One of those cold, grey mornings that smells like wet stone and bus exhaust. I'd been visiting my sister who lives near Victoria, and she'd suggested we walk through St. James's Park on the way to meet a friend for coffee. We passed the palace. Of course we passed the palace. You always end up passing the palace. There was a decent crowd for a weekday, maybe 40 or 50 people gathered along the iron railing. Mostly tourists. A school group from somewhere in Europe, the kids half listening to a teacher who was pointing at the architecture. A Japanese couple with matching rain jackets. A man eating a sandwich who clearly worked nearby and had chosen this as his lunch spot again, unbothered, like the whole royal thing had stopped impressing him years ago. And there was the guard. I noticed him because my sister pointed and said, "They're changing in 20 minutes if you want to stay." I said sure, and we drifted closer. He was standing at his post on the left side of the gate, completely motionless, back straight as a plank of wood, the bearskin hat sitting low over his forehead, casting a shadow over his eyes so you could barely see them. His jaw was set. Not tense exactly, more like settled. Like a man who decided something a long time ago and had made his peace with it. He was young. That was the first thing that surprised me. I don't know why I expected someone older. He couldn't have been more than 26, 27. There was a thinness to his neck above the collar that seemed somehow at odds with everything else about him. The stillness, the uniform, the whole performance of permanence he was putting on. People were taking photos. Obviously. A woman in her 60s stepped forward and stood next to him, grinning for her husband's camera. The guard didn't move, didn't acknowledge her. His eyes were fixed on some point in the middle distance, and I found myself following his gaze to see what he was looking at. Nothing, just the park, the bare trees, the gray sky. A little boy, maybe 7 years old, holding his father's hand, walked right up close to the guard's face and stared at him from about 8 inches away with that total absence of social awareness that only small children have. He stood there for a full 10 seconds just studying him. The guard's jaw moved, just slightly, the tiniest thing, like he was pressing his back teeth together. The boy's father pulled him away, laughing, apologizing to no one in particular. I don't know why I kept watching. There was nothing to see. That's literally the whole point of the ceremony, that nothing happens. And yet, my sister was checking her phone. The school group moved off. The Japanese couple got their photo and left. The sandwich man finished his lunch, folded the wrapper neatly, pocketed it, and walked away. And I stayed. There was something about this particular guard. I couldn't name it then. I still have trouble naming it now. It was something in the quality of his stillness. It wasn't the stillness of someone who'd been trained to stand still. It was the stillness of someone who had learned, somewhere very specific and very recently, how to be completely quiet inside themselves. How to take up almost no space. How to make themselves nearly invisible. A woman near me, English, probably local with shopping bags, muttered to her companion, "Bet he's bored out of his mind." Her companion laughed, "Wouldn't you be?" I didn't say anything, but I thought, I don't think that's what's happening. The trouble started with a teenager. He was maybe 17, part of a group, 4 boys, all in matching football hoodies, the kind of loose, easy confidence that teenagers carry when they're performing for each other. They drifted over from the direction of the park, not really interested in the palace, just looking for something to do or something to film. One of them had his phone out. They edged up close to the guard, started doing what people do, pulling faces next to him, trying to get him to react. Standard stuff. The guard had obviously been through this 1,000 times. He didn't move. didn't breathe differently. His eyes stayed fixed on that same invisible point. Then one of the boys, not the one with the phone, a different one, taller, with the particular smirk of someone who wants the other boys to think he's the most daring, stepped directly in front of the guard, blocked his line of sight completely, put his face about 6 inches from the guard's face. "Oi," he said, "you in there, mate." The crowd shifted. A few people laughed nervously. A few looked uncomfortable. The guard said nothing. His eyes didn't move to the boy's face. He looked through him, past him, at whatever that invisible point was. The boy leaned closer. "Give us a smile." "Nothing." The boy turned back to his friends, arms spread wide like "See, told you." His friends were filming. He turned back to the guard, and this time he did something that made the woman next to me draw a sharp breath. He reached out and flicked the guard's collar, just a small thing, flicked it, and said, quiet enough that I almost missed it, "Bet you were useless wherever they sent you to." The crowd went very still. I don't know if the boy knew. I genuinely don't know if he had any idea what those words meant, who they were directed at, what they might have landed on. Maybe it was just a random thing to say. Maybe it was calculated. 17-year-olds are capable of extraordinary cruelty and complete obliviousness in equal measure. What I know is what happened next. The guard's eyes moved. Just that, he didn't turn his head, didn't adjust his posture, but his eyes slowly, with a kind of controlled deliberateness that was somehow more unsettling than anger, moved to the boy's face, and stayed there. The boy's smirk dropped. Not all at once, it sort of dissolved, like something warm melting. He took a small step back without seeming to realize he'd done it. His friends had gone quiet behind him. The guard held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds. I counted. Then his eyes moved back to the middle distance, back to that invisible fixed point. His jaw settled again, everything reset, like it had never happened. The boy stood there for a moment, awkward now, the performance over. Then he mumbled something to his friends. I couldn't hear it, and they drifted away. The one with the phone had stopped filming. The crowd exhaled. A few people exchanged looks. The woman with the shopping bags put her hand over her mouth. I found myself staring at the guard's hands. They were at his sides, absolutely still, fingers flat against his thighs. There was a small scar on the back of his right hand just below the knuckle, white and healed, curved like a bracket, old enough to be settled into the skin. I thought about what the boy had said, "Wherever they sent you." And I thought about that stillness again, that specific quality of it. My sister came back from wherever she drifted. What happened? Something happened. Everyone's looking at something. "Nothing," I said, "just a kid." She looked at the guard for a moment, then at me. "You all right?" I wasn't sure how to answer that. About 10 minutes later, a woman fainted. She just went down. 1 second standing, the next crumpled against the railing, her legs simply gave out. Her husband caught most of her on the way down, but not all of it. Her head hit the iron bar on the side, not hard, but hard enough. There was a gasp from the people nearest her. Everything happened fast after that. Her husband was crouching over her, his voice pitching upward, "Claire, Claire." And the crowd pressed in the way crowds do, which is to say uselessly, people pulling out phones without knowing why, someone saying "give her space" while moving closer themselves. And then the guard moved. I don't mean he broke formation dramatically. It wasn't like that. It was almost surgical. He stepped out of his post with a precision that had nothing ceremonial about it, nothing performative. He moved like a man who had already decided before the situation existed exactly what he would do if it did. He was beside the woman in 4 steps. He went down on one knee, checked her breathing, tilted her chin. All of this in maybe 8 seconds. He looked up at the husband. "Has she eaten today?" His voice was quiet, a northern accent, Yorkshire maybe, the first words I'd heard him say. The husband stared at him blankly. He looked almost as disoriented as his wife. "Anything to eat since this morning?" The guard said again, calm and direct. I don't know, she had tea. All right. The guard had already reached into some part of his uniform that I hadn't noticed, a small pocket inside the red coat, and produced a glucose tablet still in its foil wrapper. He pressed it into the husband's hand. She's not unconscious, she's faint. Get that in her when she's with you. Keep her sitting. Don't let her stand for 5 minutes. He looked at someone in the crowd. Someone's called for the officer on duty. A man near the back held up his phone, already on it. The guard nodded. He stayed kneeling beside the woman for another moment, not hovering, not performing concern, just present, and then he looked at her face and said very quietly, "You're all right. Just stay down for a bit." She opened her eyes. They were glassy and confused. She looked at the guard, this enormous figure in a red coat and bearskin hat crouching next to her on the pavement, and her face did something complicated, like she wasn't sure if she was dreaming. "You're okay," he said again. "Take your time." 2 palace officers arrived inside 2 minutes. The guard gave them a brief, clear handover, her status, the glucose, the timeline, the kind of report that's been practiced until it's automatic. Then he stood, straightened his coat, walked back to his post and resumed his position. That was it. The crowd stood there. A few people were filming again, but differently now. The energy had shifted. The woman with the shopping bags had tears in her eyes which seemed to embarrass her. She kept blinking them away. The Japanese couple who'd left earlier had apparently come back. I saw them standing at the edge of the crowd, looking uncertain about what they'd walked back into. The tourist woman who'd stood next to the guard for her photo was still there. She wasn't looking at her camera anymore. I watched him for another few minutes. He'd returned to exactly what he'd been before, back straight, eyes forward, jaw settled, that invisible point in the middle distance. I thought about what it costs to do that. Not the standing still, the other thing. The going away somewhere inside yourself just far enough that you can hold the position, absorb the cruelty, and carry whatever you're carrying from a valley in Helmand province or Kandahar or wherever the particular darkness came from. And then, when something real happens, when someone actually needs something, to come back completely, instantly, with glucose tablets and a calm voice and exactly the right words. To know the difference between performance and purpose. To stand in the gap between the two, every single day, without anyone knowing you're there. My sister and I walked away eventually. We got our coffee. We talked about other things. But I kept thinking about him for the rest of that day and honestly for a few days after. He never told us where he'd been. He didn't need to. The stillness said everything.